I had people talk about anxiety or anything like that, and I'm like, oh, you just feel a little nervous. But then when you actually experience it, it's like, oh, this isn't just, you're not just nervous. This is overwhelming. This is not normal. This is like, you can't control this.
Ladies and gentlemen,
you are now about to witness
the journey that is the Lyfe Choyces podcast.
Yeah!
Life is good. It's just I allow my anxieties to kind of get at me a lot sometimes. And that's just something I've dealt with my whole life is anxiety. And I've had it pretty good, like under wraps for a very, very long time. It's almost like because I'm transitioning my life right now to within the next year, I'm going to be more in Thailand. There's a lot of shit going on in my brain right now. Like I've said this the last 3 episodes recorded. I've been watching a show lately, which has brought me back all these memories of childhood and relationships with siblings and parents and all that sort of stuff. And I said this, Crick was on here last week, and I said, I got to be careful because it really puts me in a sad, happy mood. Sort of like when you listen to like kind of depressing music for too many days in a row, you really start fucking getting depressed.
It brings you down.
Right?
100%.
And so that's kind of like where I'm at right now. Like I've almost been putting myself in this horrible position and then having to remind myself that all this consciousness is really like I'm choosing to be in this mindset and therefore I'm choosing to think a certain way, which means I'm then choosing to have certain things be brought to me. So it's just an interesting place where I'm at right now. And I've been like evaluating like all relationships I've had, like with my nieces, my nephews, my brothers, and then like, you know, even with the people I hang out here.
It's everything.
Yeah. But the good thing is I'm in a good, healthy relationship now.
Yeah.
Like I have a great girlfriend. The only tough part is she's in Thailand. The distance. That's it. But we talk 4 times a day.
You still get some key communication in.
Oh, absolutely. Like 4 times a day. Speaking of which, last time we talked, I had mentioned afterwards, like I'd wanted to talk about relationships. So it's kind of interesting that just kind of started like that about what's going on in my head. When it comes to relationships, now I can only imagine being a fighter, it kind of draws in a certain personality of a relationship.
Of course.
So what has your relationships been like socially when dating?
Well, for up until the past year and a half, I had a long-term girlfriend for 5 years. So that was pretty steady and consistent. We ended up breaking up, just like everybody goes through it, you know? People have their ups and downs, their different issues. We separated, and, you know, I moved back to Florida. That was right after we broke up, and I've been down here, and I've been single the whole time. And it's very hard to be dedicated to a craft like this that is so demanding of you, not only physically, but mentally as well. So you got to train, you got to work, and there's really no time for dating or seeing anybody. The lifestyle's hard, man. It can be very lonely at times, but it's something you just have to be ready for and prepared for.
So how did you deal with 5 years with someone? That's a long period of time.
It's a long period.
And it ending, you left the state that the physical, not mental, but the physical state that you were living in.
Yeah.
You moved states because of?
It was a combination between that. I'm originally from Macon, Georgia. It's not a huge town, but it's not itty bitty either. I feel like I did everything I could there. You know, like all the resources I had were gone there. Little backstory in that: my dad had died probably 4 or 5 months before that. Me and my girlfriend broke up. The gym I was training at, I felt I'd really outgrown it. I just needed a new adventure to say.
How did you deal with losing your father and a 5-year relationship at the same time?
It was horrible. And I also, on top of this, I lost a fight. It was like 3 bad things within the span of 4 or 5 months. It was horrible. It sucked.
Where did it take you mentally?
Oh man, I never get too dark with it. I try not to be, but it was just the lowest of lows. It was really hard to comprehend at times, especially losing my dad. I can speak on that subject.
Please.
I tell people my dad had 2 deaths because my dad had a stroke, and I think it was January 14th of 21, And that was my dad's first death. That was the man that raised me, that I grew up with. That man died then. And then after the stroke, he was a shell of himself, completely different, you know, couldn't really speak. And it just went downhill from there, you know, didn't have very many solid memories after that. It was very bad. So, and then my dad did finally pass away. I think it was January 2nd of 23. So a little bit of time after. So that was very hard right there and going through that.
So it's interesting how you describe that, the first death being after the stroke. My grandfather, my mom's father, had a stroke, and it's a different individual. It's not the same person that you once knew sitting there in front of you. And for me, it's like a lot of memories come into your head while you're kind of hanging out with this individual that at times doesn't really know who you are.
They don't.
And that's a very difficult thing to deal with. And this is relatively newish because you're saying it happened in 23.
Happened in 23, yeah.
That's like a year and a half ago.
And it was very tough to deal with. I mean, I consider myself a pretty mentally tough individual, especially everything I've been through in life. You know, grew up pretty blue collar, grew up on a farm, grew up wrestling, fighting MMA. So it kind of breeds a tough mentality. But watching your father die in front of you slowly is incredibly hard.
I was selfish. We lost our dad summer of 2017. And I've talked about this actually the past recent episodes that have been posted. It was a 7-week period of time from the time that he found out of the 2 stage 4 cancers that he had. And both were it just wasn't coming back from it.
2 of them.
2 stage 4 lung cancer, stage 4 tumorous brain cancer. Yeah. And like when he found out, it was a situation that they were at my middle brother's youngest child's birthday party. And apparently my dad the way he had said something or something happened that like my brothers were kind of like, whoa, what's going on there? Mm-hmm. So they had gotten like a doctor or a physician to come by and like, you know, check him out and whatnot. And then of course they found all this stuff out. He called me. I was getting ready to go on charter on a yacht, and I flew home. The boat it happened that I was able to fly home for a week and hang out with him. And then I went out on charter, and selfishly, certain relatives that have passed in my lifespan, once they have gone into hospital, I have not gone back. Mm-hmm. And part of it is I know it's because I wanted to remember them as they were, not as what I would then see them as, which is a weird thing to say because in our faith, we actually get to see them one more time when they're dead. Mm-hmm. Because like at the funeral, there's like a drape and the immediate family can say their last, you know, words to the person, but it's just like, it's just a body. You literally just see this cold body of the person you knew your whole life. It's a very weird thing. Mm-hmm. My mom's mom passed when I was like early 20s, and I never even went home once when she was in the hospital. Mm-hmm. The next time I went home was when she passed. I don't know what the therapist would say to me about that situation, but seeing the people that are closest to you slowly deteriorate is difficult.
It's incredibly difficult.
Yeah. And that stays with you.
Oh yeah.
So, Jamie, who was on here, you know, Crick.
Mm-hmm.
So he was on here. He's the episode that went on last week before you. And he was nice enough to share losing his dad 14 years ago and his mom 5 years ago. And what happened to him or what he chose to do the period of time afterwards is he unfortunately admits that his dad, it was like a couple of years of heavy drinking. Mm-hmm. And then his mom, he was able to handle that a bit better because he saw that what he had chosen to do the first time around wasn't the wisest. I didn't go to heavy drinking. There were some days that I chose to just go and sit somberly in front of people at a bar and drink to kind of like think about it. Mm-hmm. What was it like for you once the man had passed? What happened? Like,
I mean, I can tell you this: the day that he did pass, I remember my mom calls me because this is still during there's still like COVID. I'm not saying restrictions, but at the hospital, there's only so many people they let in. There was only like one guest. You couldn't bring the whole family in or anything at this time. And I remember she called me and he told me that he took his last breath. And I said, okay. And then I went right back outside and just started to work.
No tears, nothing?
Nothing.
Just stone cold into the job.
And that's what I did, because at the time, you know, my family had some land and we were clearing the land and we were doing a lot out there. And I just kept going. You know, it sucked that my dad was, you know, it's obviously horrible and it's horrific that my dad was on his deathbed and he ended up dying. But life keeps going. I just went outside and just went to work. I can, you know, probably 2 days before he died, my mom called me, and, you know, my brother, he came to my door and he woke me up. He doesn't live at the house or anything, you know, so when I saw him wake me up, I was like, oh, he's passed, you know, but no, my mom called us, and she goes, hey, you know, we're not having this, do not resuscitate. We're not going to do that. And I remember that hit me pretty hard. That was like the real emotional moment right there. I could already knew, especially when he had that the second stroke, and I saw how he looked. He looked like a fish out of water. I already knew then that he was going to die. But when we had the do not resuscitate, that was like the nail in the coffin.
That kind of like, as much as one knows, okay, this is the end, you know, in a couple weeks or a couple of days that unfortunately, you know, my dad's not going to be here anymore. That phrase, that conversation just kind of really turned the volume up and really made it like official that like, oh fuck, this is actually happening.
Yeah, this is actually happening. This is it. And I'll never forget, you know, we're in Georgia. I remember it being cold and rainy, and I showered. We went outside. I remember we put diesel in the tractor and we went to work. That's what we did that day. And it sucked.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's how I was raised though, in a lot of ways.
I shared this on the last episode. I'm very fortunate. I'm so fortunate that I had the father that I did, and that I had him for almost 40 years of my life, because it was the summer before my 40th. And his dad died when I was 4. His mom died when I was like around 13, 14 years of age. But like it was something that was discussed in the household. Like, I don't want to say regularly, but there's always like that friend that lost a sibling or a parent or a grandparent, like as you're growing up. And so whenever that happened in our community, as a community, we always kind of rallied together, because we do what's called Shiva, and you go to the people's houses for a couple of nights of services. And so my dad always expressed to us at a young age that, you know, death is part of life. Like you're going to go through it, and it's not going to be a happy time, but it's part of life. And I think because of that, I've been able to grieve those who I've lost easier. Mm-hmm. And I also remember, I've shared this story before, is my father was a pillar in our community, not just in our household, in our family, but in our community. He was a gentleman that people went to for advice. He was a person that, and again, you never know this as a child, but he was loved by a lot of people. He was respected by a lot of people. So therefore he was strong for a lot of people. So when he was going through chemo, and I was home, and you hear like people call, how you doing, blah, blah, blah. And, no, I feel like it's working. Like, you hear him say all these things, but again, I was sitting on the couch and he was sitting in his chair and he was kind of hunched over. You could see him thinking, and it was like this weird, soft, warm blanket that kind of came over me in that moment, where I knew that he knew that this is it. Like, there is no lengthy amount of time left. This is something that's going to speed up, and it's going to be over soon. And that moment for me, I didn't cry in that moment. I witnessed that energy, and I was like, damn, this is like real. Yeah. It didn't hit me until obviously, like, I was coming back from one of the islands on the boat. We finished the charter, and the phone calls were being had, because I was the only one not at the hospital, about like this happening and that happening, and I was trying to stand my ground for like his wishes. And at the end of the day, everyone else was right, because like the best thing for everyone was A, not B. But when you get that phone call to be notified that that person is no longer there, their physical being is, but their soul is just, it's just, that's not up.
Yeah.
I don't even know what a word to use. It's just done. And that's what hits you. That really, and then like, have you or had you grieved in some way since then? Like besides just going straight back out into the field to work?
Since his death?
Yeah.
Some ways I have, some ways I haven't. Mainly I haven't.
Okay.
You know, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I haven't.
Yeah.
I really don't think about it. I try to just block it out. Anytime I do get memories of him, I just block it out.
So interesting.
And I just don't think about it.
Okay. So is this tough then to talk about?
No, not really. I just don't think about it.
Okay.
I mean, not to be short and sweet with it right
No. Listen,
But this is how I am, me personally, with life. Anytime anything somewhat bad happens, I flip the switch. And I usually, training is my sanctuary. It's my church. And I go to the gym. I keep training no matter what. No matter what happens, I keep going. And I block everything out.
Do you think that maybe that's your grieving?
Possibly, yeah.
Like just the way you're expressing it, because I can only imagine, because the training is pretty full on when it comes to MMA training. And then there's the level of, it's not just a heavy bag all the time. There's a sparring partner. You actually get into the octagon and you actually go, I don't know, 50%, 90%. You might even go 100% because you have to get ready for your next fight. And even if you think you're shutting off anything that tragically happens in your life, maybe that is actually like a very subconscious like outlet for you to get that energy out of your body. And maybe that's why you're being so successful, is that you're channeling all of that other energy and getting it out of your system through the fighting.
No, I agree with that. There's definitely, I feel like the negative emotions and the negative energy that do come out of a situation like that, they have to go somewhere. It could either be super self-destructive, and you could lead to drinking, drugs, anything. And I'm fortunate that I kind of try to push it into something positive, which is training. And the good thing about training is, if we're going to do 5-5s, which is 25 minutes, I know that's 25 minutes of peace. There's nothing else that's going on outside of me and you sparring or me and you wrestling.
I'm going to have to go back to school to get my doctorate in psychology, because I find it so fascinating the way you explain this. 5-5s, which means 5 rounds of 5 minutes,
yep,
where you're going full tilt, right? And you're saying you're so peaceful because this is what makes you happy. I'm thinking like a therapist is like, that has to be you literally every fucking thing, even if you're not saying it's going through your mind, it's going through your body.
Sure.
Because I don't think it's like rainbows and butterflies and you're punching. You know what I'm saying? I think it's a lot more of that kind of pushed down, built up, like everything just kind of coming out, because you're 100% right. When it comes to grieving and bad things happening in someone's life, if you just bottle it down and push it down, there are a lot of negatives that can come from it. It's not just drinking. It's not just drugs. You could be an abusive person in a relationship, both physically and verbally, which you're not. You're a very, like we've said this before, you're a very calm, tempered, smiling, happy, kind of go-lucky individual when you're out in public. Calm, you kind of have this like very tempered personality, but then I can only imagine being on the other end of the training, or the other end of the fists and the leg kicks and everything. Like, you're smiling about it. Like, I feel like that might actually be where you're grieving of anything, not just your dad's death, but like relationships or shitty things that are happening in life. That is probably where it comes out. It's interesting because, do you know who Anthony Bourdain is?
I know. I'm a gigantic.
Oh, love
Anthony
it.
Bourdain fan.
Okay. He's like, when he wrote his book, I remember,
I just listened to his book, Kitchen Confidential.
Yeah, dude.
Great.
That shit changed my life.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I was in my early 20s, and I remember which restaurant I was at. I don't even know who gave me the book, but someone did. And I remember, like, I would be sitting on my breaks on an upside down milk crate, and reading this book, and I'm literally reading someone discuss my life as I'm living it. And it was just unbelievable. It was the most amazing book I've ever read. He, later on in his life, I think above the age of 50, if I'm not mistaken, he got into MMA training or jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
jiu-jitsu.
So it's interesting because I just expressed to you a little bit off camera, maybe a bit on the camera, but might not be in the episode, about like the anxiety that I've been dealing with in the past week, which has been overwhelming. It's literally been almost as bad as like when I was in my early 25 years of age, and I had one of two, what I say or what the doctor said was like a nervous breakdown. And so this anxiety is coming back in, and it's really kind of like opening my mind to certain thoughts that like I thought I had already overcome. And I've always had the thought in the past maybe 3 years about possibly getting into some sort of martial art. Because I remember Anthony Bourdain saying not only was it excellent for him to learn a new skill, but it also allowed him to release a lot of that stuff that was still inside of him that he was still dealing with, because he also dealt with a lot of drug addiction and I think all of us deal with some level of mental instability. Of course. It's just life is so fucking difficult at times that we don't always know how to handle things. So I've thought about getting into it.
The good thing about jiu-jitsu is you don't deal with head trauma. You're not going to deal with knockouts. You're not going to deal with anything like that. You can do no gi or you can do gi. The gi is like the outfit you see people wear with the belt around them. It's very martial arts space. It's great. You learn all the submissions. You learn everything. It's a good outlet. And then when you go live, you can go pretty hard and you don't get hurt because it's just submissions. It's just.
So it's a lot of the grappling?
It's a lot of It's all grappling. No striking.
I'm looking into it. I've been thinking about it, especially right now since like I am kind of dealing a little bit with my anxiety kind of getting overwhelming for me lately. I just like I want to find something that I can kind of put that energy to something else, because like you're saying, when I focus on something else where I'm like 100% doing this task, then all those thoughts that are abundant, they disappear.
They go away.
Yeah, for at least the time in which I'm doing that thing. When I had my first nervous breakdown at 24, 25, I was working at a restaurant, and I worked every single day because the hours, like once I walked into work, all of the noise stopped, because I was just, whether I was cooking, serving, or managing, I had to focus on what I was doing. And I shit you not, like as soon as work was over, like within an hour, it was chaos in my head. And this was like fucking months I dealt with this shit. Like I've lost the part of my sight in my right eye because of it. Yeah. So I need to, now that this situation's happening for me, I need to focus on other things because I don't want to lose any more of my eyesight.
Yeah. No, as you speak in the anxiety, and you could say like the nervous breakdowns or panic attacks, I get it. I've been there.
Yeah.
You know, I've really felt like, because I went to a therapist for a little while, and then I went to a psychiatrist. And this was all like around the time of my dad's, like his first stroke and between his second stroke. So I get the immense stress and the anxiety that people can feel. And me personally, in my life up until that point, I never felt it. I had people talk about anxiety or anything like that, and I'm like, oh, you just feel a little nervous. But then when you actually experience it, it's like, oh, this isn't just, you're not just nervous. This is overwhelming. This is not normal. This is like, you can't control this.
It comes at you like a bat out of hell. And it's not, I'm nervous to go do that speech in front of the class type shit.
No, way different.
Yeah, it's the amount of times I do that when it's happening, like I know that I've gotten it under control to a certain level, but anytime that I'm sitting anywhere, and I always feel bad because, like I said before, like a duck on water, we always want to be strong for others, right? We don't want to put it on other people. I definitely don't want my mom to be worrying about me. I don't want my girlfriend to be worrying about me, because I don't want them thinking it's something that they're doing or not doing. Like, it's absolutely in here. But what I do, a big thing to know that it's happening to me is out of nowhere, I'll just, that kind of like release of that oxygen, that air, is kind of like myself trying to calm myself down. I've not been to a therapist. I've not actually, again, it's something I've thought about for years. I've not gone to a therapist. I do believe that everyone should go and speak to someone. I use this platform as my therapy, because whatever the person wants to speak about, we speak about. And then usually that's something that's also in my head. So I'm able to like communicate and get stuff off my chest. I'm glad that another person sits here and admits that they also at times have it. It's overwhelming. And I say it's noise. It's very difficult at times to get a hold onto the thoughts that are happening. And I'm not saying they're all the way off the deep end thoughts. They're just a lot of thoughts.
And I can only speak from my experience, but you can't get a hold to them. They're going so fast, and it's like you can't stop it. It's
So what did you do then? Like the first thing when you noticed that it was actually a real thing, it's not, because again, I understand what you're saying when people say, oh no, you're just a little nervous, because again, you're not far off from the generation I grew up in. There wasn't a lot of labels for these things. There wasn't a lot of knowledge about these things because the general public didn't discuss them. Now people have a bit more comfortableness with discussing it because we don't want others to deal with it.
No,
and if they are dealing with it, we want them to know that there's other people that have gone through or are still going through. I fully am aware, because I don't want to take pills to change my mindset.
Yep.
This is something I will need. This is something I get to deal with the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And by sharing with people, I'm able to navigate through the tougher times of it. Mm-hmm. So when it happened to you, like what allowed you to get help? What allowed you to realize what it was?
I guess I'll start from square one. I didn't know what was happening. I thought I was going crazy. Because I never experienced emotions like that. Like felt like I was going crazy. I remember my palms were sweating. I was like my armpit, everything. It was like my body was just in overdrive. It was as crazy as it sounds. It was difficult to like drive a vehicle and be in like confined places. I felt like I was trapped, and it's like every survival instinct, like fight or flight, was kicking in. And it was tough, and it sucked, and it went on for 2 years or so. It went on forever because I went to therapy, and the therapist sucked. Horrible. I remember I told her my concerns and everything, and then I remember I said, I forget how I worded it, but I remember at the end of it, I said, yeah, but everything's going to be okay, though. And then she looked at me, and she said, everything's not going to be okay. And then I was like, what am I paying you for?
Yeah, that's not a good answer.
It was a horror. I never went back after that session.
Yeah.
I paid her. It was like $125 or something for an hour. I paid her that money, and I never went back. I was like, what are we doing here? It was not very constructive. So I never went back, and I just dealt with it on my own, which for a long time, it really didn't get any better. And the big thing I did during this time was, okay, let's be sober. Let's not do any drugs. Let's not drink. Let's not do anything like that. That helped a lot with the anxiety, because I think in some ways that what I was dealing with was maybe like again, not a neuroscientist or anything, but I think there was something going on with my brain. I think the stress had just whacked me out so much that probably being in a sober state of mind was the best for me. Because I think maybe going through the ups and downs with, using different drugs or drinking would kind of, just whack me out.
It doesn't help with dealing with anxieties and stress.
No.
Because the drugs and the alcohol, they take you up and down as well, and they put you in different moods mentally. Mm-hmm. I know that, like, when I get into this mindset, I become very tired or lethargic or not wanting to do anything, and it's not because I'm depressed. It's because this is working way more than if I went to the gym every single day and pumped out like two a day sessions every day.
Yeah.
Like when this is going up and down, it's as if you're running a marathon in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Therapists, I find, and I've not been to any of them, but my friends who have tell me the things of good and bad ones, and it's like they either act like that, where you're just like, that doesn't make sense, or they just ask you questions like, well, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Well, what do you feel about that? Like, I don't understand that. The one therapist that I love is this gentleman here. This is called The Tools. I don't have my reading glasses on. Phil Schultz. Mm-hmm. This guy right here, there's a movie on Netflix called The Tools. Excellent documentary, and it's about him going to this therapist for therapy. And his style of therapy is what I believe more people need. You know, it really gets to the root of what's going on inside of the individual, rather than just constantly putting it back on them and saying, well, what do you think?
Of course.
So you dealt with all this over the course of 2 years. And because, like I say, it's not something that just gets cured. Medicines can numb it. I think it's like a thing like when you have an addiction, it's something that you have to work on regularly or when it appears again. Do you find that it comes and goes still?
It comes and goes still, but it's definitely 10% of what it was. It'll randomly hit me. Randomly. Some days I'll wake up and I'll have my morning coffee and I sit there and I'm like, it's back. You know, I'm like, it's like my old friend though, you know. And I'm just like, okay, here we are. But it's nothing crazy anymore, you know.
But it's easier because once you know what it is, right? I think that's like the biggest thing for us that do deal with things kind of on our own is once you, I don't want to say put a label on it, but once you're aware of what it is that's happening, when it starts creeping back in, you know exactly what's going to happen. And then you know, okay, well, if I let this really happen, the next month or 2 months is going to be like this. Or if I take the time, and even at the very smallest point, talk out loud by myself about it. And that's what I find I do is I talk out loud and I really, not that I don't pray and not that I don't reflect and not that I don't give gratitude on a daily basis, but when these things happen, I do find myself in a metaphorical way getting on my knees quite regularly because it really makes me, it's the only time in my matured years of my journey that I feel that the present moment is elongated because I find that nowadays time just flies by. Yeah. A day, a month, a year, 2 years just seems to go by in a half a second. But whenever this friend comes back in to my life, I notice that you're so present because you're so aware that it's happening that all of a sudden an hour really is a fucking hour. Yeah. Like it's very, very strange.
One of the most interesting things I found out because I went to, like I said, like regular therapy, and I can't speak for all therapists, but the one I went to sucked. Just horrible. And then I went to a psychiatrist, and they were pushing all types of drugs. And then I remember I got the prescription for it, and then I just couldn't do it because I had a friend. He did the drugs, and he took everything he was supposed to. And he told me everything he went through. He gained weight, couldn't get erections anymore. He was just kind of whacked out. And I was like, I would rather not go through that. Let me handle this a certain way. So I'm a big Sam Harris fan. And he has an app called Waking Up, which is a meditation app. And for the longest time, I thought meditation was just fucking bullshit, bro. I was like, this fucking nonsense. But I really respect this guy a lot. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of him. I said, you know what? Let me try this. Sure enough, that little voice in your head, you learn to kind of quiet it down. And then once you're quiet, you'll see these completely random thoughts just come out of left field and come into your head and then go away. And then another completely random one comes in. And then it kind of made me understand that, hey, some of these thoughts that come into my head or these emotions, they're not exactly who I am, if that makes sense to me. They're just random, and they're coming in. Do I pay attention to them or do I not pay attention to them? And doing that for a long period of time helped me calm down, realize some of these crazy emotions or these crazy thoughts that come in, I don't have to pay attention to them. I can just say, hey, there it is. Okay, it's going to go.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Two things. I 5-7 years ago didn't believe in any of this stuff that I now participate in every single day. Meditation, definitely, I do it every single day, and I visualize, where I want to go. Like I'm putting myself to somewhere that I know I'm already at, basically, and it helps quiet everything down. The statement of some thoughts come into your head, but they're not your thoughts. They're not you. Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more with you. There's many times where I'm just like, whether I'm meditating or I'm just watching TV, and it's as clear as someone in the room speaking to me. Mm-hmm. And it's not that it's in a different voice, it's what I would assume is my voice saying it in my brain, but it's not like I thought that thought. which is and I don't know what that is. I've not done any research yet on that kind of discussion, but it's so very interesting because when those thoughts come in, I've almost gotten to the point, I guess, where the ones I receive, I listen to because I feel like they're being said for a reason. Now, it's not saying go cut the head off a chicken.
Yeah.
It's not stuff like that. It's thoughts that are like, go put that away right now. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should go put that away right now because that action will change the trajectory of my day, maybe like to a positive. So it's like, it's interesting that you're saying that because I've had that for years where you know it's not you. You know it's not your thought that came into your head, but it's still a thought, and you can choose. Hold on to it, don't hold on to it, listen to it, don't listen to it. There's a whole bunch of stuff. I am at a point right now where I don't know what it is. I wouldn't even know what to type in to research what that is. But I'm glad that someone else also has that same thing happening to them.
And again, I don't know where they come from either. I have no idea.
It's a whole other topic for a whole other day, but thank you so much again for showing up today. Thank you for talking about, death and nervous breakdowns and stuff,
Oh, got you.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like it's very warming, and it helps me a great deal when I go through these points in my life to sit down with friends and sometimes with strangers that come on the show that I don't know before the show and share these stories. It helps me a great deal. So I'm super, super grateful that you came by again today to have this conversation.
No, thank you. And hey, everybody goes through it, so you might as well talk about it.
Might as well share.
Might as well share.
Amazing. Well, you'll be back again. We'll talk more about this stuff. For everyone out there, as always, thank you so much for coming back each and every week, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 2 p.m. on the Lyfe Choyces podcast. Much love.
Ladies and gentlemen.
You are now about
The Journey, Life Choices podcast.